All right, so if you're thinking about moving to Eastern North Carolina, Wilmington, Jacksonville, Hampstead, Surf City, Morehead City, any of the smaller coastal towns included, this video is gonna save you a bunch of headache. I live here, I work here, and I help families move here every single week. And I can honestly tell you that there are some things I wish I knew before I moved here. So in this video, we're going over some of the surprising things about Eastern North Carolina that I think you need to know. Stick around to the end because the last few are ultra surprising for a lot of people, especially if you're coming from up north. Now let's start with the weather. The weather here in North Carolina in general has mood swings. It's much like every human out there. In the morning, you wake up and it's beautiful. At lunchtime, you have a thunderstorm, and then in the evening, you have the most beautiful sunset that you could imagine. It just is what it is. You find yourself tracking tropical storms, hurricanes, cyclones, you name it, you're tracking it, you're stocking up on water and food, and you're checking your generator constantly, especially in hurricane season. The weather here is unpredictable, and so I always joke and say that weather people are a joke in this state because they never get it right. So if you're looking for hot summers, mild winters, and a nice beachy climate, yes, North Carolina is for you. But one thing that you do need to pay attention to is the humidity here, the storms here, and then also, like we're gonna talk about a little bit later, is the flood zones. It all matters when it comes to moving to Eastern North Carolina. And so if you're moving from a climate like Florida, North Carolina is gonna be tolerable. You can manage the hurricanes like you do in Florida. But if you're moving from the Midwest or you're moving from the Northeast, a lot of the weather and the climate here can shock you and can be unbearable. So what's the upside about the weather? Honestly, it's the winters. The winters are short. When you get snow, it's like a holiday here because everything shuts down. So honestly, if you hate scraping off your windshield from ice, and if you hate those northeastern winters or just heavy snow and it's always freezing, always gloomy, the winter here is gorgeous. But the Eastern North Carolina weather can certainly keep you on your toes. All right, and the next thing is flood zones. You have to pay attention to flood zones because it could make or break your sale. It could make or break your qualification if you're getting a mortgage as well. And when you're on Zillow, when you're on Realtor.com, it's gonna give you those flood risk levels, 1 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 10 out of 10, not always accurate. There's a resource that we use as realtors. It's fris.nc.gov. You're gonna wanna check it because just because it's a pretty house, it's in perfect condition and all of that, doesn't mean that it's safe from flooding. Just because the house is on a raised foundation or on piers doesn't mean that it's safe from flooding. So you will want to check that. Flood insurance, I always recommend flood insurance, whether you're in a flood zone or not. It could cost you a couple thousand a year, depending on where you are. And if you're on an island where of course it's gonna be a flood zone, you could be a few thousand, you could be, 5 to 10,000. But if you're in a flood zone X and you get flood insurance, you could be a couple $100s a year. So something to keep in mind, because if you add that payment onto your mortgage for that insurance, a lot of people, it could make or break their qualification. But if you're paying cash for the home, it's gonna be a little bit cheaper. You can choose what you want to insure and what you don't. But flood zones are a big thing here. And just because you think you're in a safe area doesn't mean that it's not gonna flood. Just because it's in a flood zone X doesn't mean it's not gonna flood. So something to think about with regard to buying real estate here in Eastern North Carolina. Now that brings me to the cost of living. Eastern North Carolina is marketed as more affordable than a lot of places, and especially for beach towns. But depending on where you're coming from, it might not actually be more affordable, and I'll tell you why. Yes, home prices and more specifically real estate taxes tend to be cheaper than most other places in the United States. The prices of the homes themselves are actually going up, and with interest rates as high as they are, it's pretty hard for a first-time home buyer to actually afford a home here. with the appreciation that we've seen over the last couple of years, home prices are only going up, which makes it much more difficult. And then you add on the home insurance costs. Home insurance itself is actually pretty affordable, but then you have your wind and hail, which is thrown on top of your homeowner's insurance. And then you have potentially your flood insurance that you carry as well. So where you're saving money on taxes, you're making it up on the insurance side. Groceries, vehicles, things like that, it's all a wash. Honestly, if you look at the numbers, it's not enough to really swing or make or break your monthly budget from one state to another. But the insurance, it can absolutely be more expensive than you think or anticipate before you move. Now, if you're moving from New York City, San Francisco, San Diego, or really any of the big cities, yes, you're gonna be saving money. You're gonna think it's a steal. But if you're coming from rural America where you can still buy homes in the $150,000, $200,000 price point and your insurance is super cheap, well, this is gonna be a bit more expensive and you won't actually save money. So depending on where you're coming from, the cost of living can absolutely be a factor. And then there's bugs, mosquitoes, fire ants, palmetto bugs, AKA cockroaches, the size of your finger. They're huge and it's all part of the package. Bugs and wildlife, alligators are very real here. You won't see them every day, but they do exist, and you'll see them on the golf courses, you'll see them in the intercoastal. They exist here, and that honestly surprises a lot of people because they're not as prevalent here as they are maybe in Florida, but they exist and you have to watch out for them. Normally they're minding their own business, but you don't really want to go swimming with them in the rivers or anything like that. Mosquitoes, palmetto bugs, fire ants, you're going to want to treat your lawns for those insects because they could start eating at your house, the wood framing of your house. They will bite you and your kids if you're running barefoot in your lawn. And obviously the mosquitoes swarming around you when you're trying to have a party or whatever in the backyard. That's annoying. I use a pest company. I recommend all of my clients use a pest company to treat for this and spray for mosquitoes just so that you can bear it in the summer and spring when they're most active. And the sixth thing that really took me back was that military is everywhere here in North Carolina, but specifically Eastern North Carolina. We have Camp Lejeune, MCAS New River, and Cherry Point. So Cherry Point and MCAS New River are the air bases. And then you have Camp Lejeune, which houses a lot of the grunts and artillery and just different variations of the military as well as contractors. And the reason I bring this up is because depending on where you live, you get a lot of turnover in neighbors. You might see someone, 1 month and then they deploy the next and then their wife moves back to wherever they are from. There's a lot of turnover, and then you have PCS season, which generally is like early or late spring, early summer. So yeah, your neighbors are gonna be turning over. So it's a kind of a bad thing for kids if you want your kids to have friends and actually have a nice sense of community. It's kind of hard to do when you have that much turnover. However, the entire coastal area is so patriotic. There are festivals year-round that highlight this patriotism, and American flags all over the place, military support all over the place. And that's one thing that I really love. Me and my family, I'm a Marine Corps vet. My family is very patriotic and we love going to these events, these festivals, but also, you will have airplanes flying over you. Just this morning, I was closing on a house in Wilmington and my buyers were standing in the driveway and asked about the jets flying overhead, asked if there was a base nearby. And I said, yeah, it's about an hour up the road. That's probably either MCAS New River or it's Cherry Point, which is 2 hours from Wilmington. And yeah, the jets fly overhead, the Ospreys, the helicopters, they all fly over, and they might go to ILM, the airport, they might go to Jacksonville Airport, or just fly, on their training path. But it is prevalent here, and the community really finds a sense of patriotism and a love for our military in the area. So if that's not something that you can get on board with, this might not be the best area for you. But if it is, you're gonna find a lot of pride in this area. And that leads me into the next one, which is a great sense of community. The neighborhoods here are close-knit. You become friends with your neighbors, you look out for one another, you help one another all the time. But with that said, gossip runs faster here than it does on the internet. It just is what it is, especially if you live in a bigger neighborhood with a tight HOA or a restrictive HOA. Gossip runs heavy. But if you like being able to go to festivals with your neighbors, you know everybody in the town. You know, these towns, Eastern North Carolina is great for you because you really do feel like you can be neighborly and have that sense of community, and you trust people around your kids. You trust other kids with your kids. And so Southern hospitality is a real thing. When you move here, you're gonna be invited to block parties. You're gonna be invited to the local church or, you know, restaurants or breweries with your neighbors, with your community. People are very friendly. And one thing I get a lot when I'm driving clients through these neighborhoods, through these towns, is that it's kind of weird for them that everybody in the neighborhood actually waves. When you're driving through, people will literally wave at you. The other day, my brother and I, we were filming a video and we had my daughter with me, and she was poking her head out the sunroof, going through one of these gated communities, and she's waving at all the neighbors and they're waving, and then the garbage truck driver honked the horn at her. And so everyone's just super friendly, and it really gives you a great sense of community. And number 8 is that all beaches are not created equal. Wrightsville Beach is upscale, lots of money, lots of students, and ultra busy. Carolina Beach is a bit more funky, quirky, you know, a little bit more lively, and has a bit more of a nightlife. Topsail Island, a little bit more laid back, more family friendly, family oriented, and local grub. Emerald Isle, Atlantic Beach, totally different vibe. So when you're moving here, when you call me, don't just say that you're looking to be on the beach. We actually need to explore those beaches and find the beach that fits your vibe for you and your family. Because like I said, they're not all created equal. And honestly, if you look at Carolina Beach, but you are a low-key type person where you just like to chill, Carolina Beach isn't gonna be for you. Topsail Island might be for you, Surf City, or maybe even parts of Emerald Isle. But Carolina Beach, a bit more funky, a bit more quirky, right? A bit more of a nightlife. Wrightsville Beach, super expensive. If you're not looking to spend $2 million plus on an island, Wrightsville Beach isn't gonna be for you. But you can find that, you know, maybe in Surf City for $1 million and under. So with that said, you don't wanna live on the wrong beach or near the wrong beach. You want the beach to fit your vibe and your family's style. So before we get looking at beach properties and stuff, let's learn a little bit more about how you like to live, what your lifestyle is like, and then we'll take it from there. And number 9 is that Eastern North Carolina is not a secret anymore. Growth is absolutely exploding. This area is being found out about. Neighborhoods are popping up seemingly overnight. There's more and more happening every single day, and tourism is becoming more and more heavy during the summer months. So if you're somebody that's looking for peace and quiet, if you're looking for neighborhoods that don't really have any hustle and bustle, any kind of commotion, you know, Eastern North Carolina soon enough is not gonna be that area. Right now, we are seeing an influx of buyers, primarily for the change in lifestyle, the change of pace, and the affordability, which, as we spoke about, is not nearly as affordable as people think, but it is exploding. And you have big builders that are purchasing huge swaths of land in this area. And you have commercial districts that are only getting bigger to support the influx of people. So it's something to think about, you know, in 10, 20 years from now, how do you vision your life? If you don't want it to be in a busy area, it's something to think about and consider when considering moving to this area. But if you are okay with accepting that growth over time, you know, Eastern North Carolina is still a wonderful place to live. I'll probably still be here in 20 years, regardless of the growth, but it's a good thing for investors or investment-minded people because you will see that massive appreciation over time with commercial districts comes appreciation in home values. And oh, by the way, taxes are pretty low here. So it's not like you're gonna be paying a ton more money with that commercial district. In fact, more commercial will help the taxes go down. So with that said, it's a consideration you're gonna want to think about with regard to moving here. And last but not least, the healthcare here can absolutely be frustrating. If you need a children's specialist or just an oncologist or some kind of big specialty clinic, you might be driving into Raleigh or Charlotte, maybe Duke or Winston-Salem, Chapel Hill area to get some of those bigger services, more specialized services. Here in Eastern North Carolina, we have long wait times for the hospital in Wilmington, in Jacksonville, in New Bern. There's a pretty significant wait time. Right now, people are more concerned about travel distance to those hospitals in addition to that wait time. So if you want to live right next to the hospital, fine, we can find you that. But most people that want a little bit of peace, want to a slower lifestyle, that kind of thing, you might be 25, 30, 40 minutes away from any major hospital. So if you have health ailments or any kind of concerns with that, you might be driving a bit. You know, my wife is pregnant right now. One of the considerations that we're making right now is which hospital we're gonna be going to. We live in Holly Ridge, and so it's 30 minutes to get to any hospital that we're gonna be delivering at. So if it's quick, we don't have any time. We're getting an ambulance and we're rushing to the hospital. It's gonna take, 20 minutes by ambulance probably. But if we do have a little bit of time, we're gonna pick Wilmington in our personal situation. But with that said, there's a lot of people that don't like Onslow Memorial. There's a lot of people that don't like Novant Health or Brunswick Medical Center or any of them out in Morehead City or in New Bern. So something to think about if you need specialized care, if you need a hospital, frequently, it's gonna be a pain in the butt for you, and this might not be the best area. But if you're a younger, healthier family, this might not be a big deal for you. And, for my personal family, it's something that we were willing to risk. So something to think about, but it is surprising that the healthcare system here in Eastern North Carolina isn't as good as most people hope it will be. So there it is. There's 10 things that are surprising about Eastern North Carolina: the good, the bad, and the downright inconvenient, like the medical system. But I absolutely love living here so much that I was able to convince my brother and his family to move here as well. Everybody that comes to visit loves it. They say they want to move here. And so if I didn't scare you away with any of that list, give me a shout. My number and email address are right there on the screen. I do respond to all the calls, texts, and emails myself, and I would love to have a conversation and see how I can best help. I hope I didn't scare you guys away, but until the next video, peace. See you later.